Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to Project and Portfolio 2. In this class, you're going to start to develop some awesome portfolio pieces, and like you had mentioned, we're going to start to transition into building something as a team. So this class is all individual, but you should definitely have the mindset of you're coming into this class working on an individual area of a level, and later on down the line when you're developing that out, you're going to be building something as a team, with a group of 4 or 5 of you. So things to know about this class is there are multiple tracks that are going to be going on along the same time, right? So we have a technical track and a creative track, and then the one that blends between the two of those is the documentation track, right? So the technical stuff that we're going to be going over is Perforce, very, very intensive, but it's going to be very rewarding and going to be something you're going to be using throughout your entire career, whether it's Perforce or Git or Bitbucket, the different types of version control. All of it's the same. The reason that we use Perforce is because the program advisory board comes in and they say that's what we want to see on their resume. That's the industry standard. So that's why we're using Perforce here at Full Sail. And then the creative stuff that we're going to be getting into, that's where we're starting to design out the level and design the map and really get to express yourselves creatively, right? So we're going to have some restrictions. If you haven't already taken a look at the creative vision, that's something we're going to be going over in the lab. So like we are working on the game Scraps, right? We have this game set out. We have these parameters and these restrictions for you, and that's to guide yourselves and help you guys keep yourselves in check, right? And protect you from yourself, right? Because you guys may want to be adding in AI and adding in weapons and adding in combat and all this extra stuff when we don't yet have the skills for that, the time, or the resources. So we're going to keep you inside of these little restrictions to allow you to design something as to the best of your ability. So in other classes, you may have had a little bit of room of creativity, and you have to follow some guidelines and things like that. But in this class, you have the ability to do what you want and design something that you can accomplish. So don't design something that is too difficult or you'd have no clue how to start. Try and think of something feasible within your own skills and go forward from there. And then the documentation comes from working on our LDD and all the other documents that go along with the class. There's not too many, but there are a few, and they are definitely important. So up here on the screen, this is just the stuff we're going to be going over today. A lot of stuff to get going at first, but once we get going in the first few weeks, and after that, we're just going to be critiquing our work and making revisions, making edits to our maps. So the structure of the class is you're going to start out with a brainstorming document. You're going to come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of different concepts for what you want to do in your level. You're going to refine that down to an LDD, right, to a level design document. Exactly what do you want to do in your level specifically, and then you're going to refine that even further into a map. All right, and then you're going to take, that's just a visual element, the visual layout of your map, and then we're going to refine that going forward. So you're going to have your first milestone for your map, just the rough version of it, do as much as you can. We're going to come into class, critique it, review it, do as much as we can to improve it, and then you're going to have your final submission. And then what you're going to do with that map is you're going to take that into the next month level design, and you're going to start to block out your mechanics, get going from there. And then alongside level design, you'll be taking another team-based class, but then you'll get to Project and Portfolio 3, where you're going to come together as a team and put all your areas together. So it'll be 4 or 5 areas in one level, okay? So you'll be seamlessly transitioning from one area to the next and creating a whole cohesive experience among a group of 4 or 5 of you, maybe 6. So that's the overall breakdown of the class. So I want you to think about when you're working on your brainstorming assignment and your LDD that these are things that you're directly going to build upon each other. So it's important you have the big picture in mind. Skype, FSO message, and email are usually the best way to get a hold of me. If you need to, I'll just put it up in here, my Skype contact, fs.andrew.o'connor. Usually my quickest response is through Skype. If you ever need to get a hold of me, check in the announcements for my office hours as well. I'm always going to be available for you guys. If you have any questions, want to get one-on-one feedback on any of your stuff. So for this class, we're going to start out with a technical element, hopefully not scare you guys off too bad. and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and we'll do a little bit more of the creative stuff. So I try to do for every lecture, have a little bit of each in both tracks, have a little bit of technical stuff, a little bit of creative, just so we balance everything out. So really it's all about this first month, or about this first day is about Perforce. Getting you guys comfortable, getting everybody set up, and getting your work starting to be submitted through Perforce. So you guys are going to be on the server gdnperforce.fullsail.edu:1337. All the online students are GDN resource, same code, but GDN resource up there. And what you may see when you log in, everyone has a username already. It's the first part of your Full Sail email, and your password is set to password. So feel free to change that if you want, and make sure you go through the instructions on how to set up a workspace and things like that, and we can go over that in lab if anyone needs any help doing so. But you're going to see here this IND229 folder, that's us, and inside that there's a 1603 folder and the IND content folder. So the 1603, and you guys are section 0, so you'll go to your corresponding section, whatever it may be, and you're going to notice inside a working folder and a compiled folder, okay? So your working folder, this is where you're going to be submitting your project, your Unity project, to make changes to and work on it throughout the month. And you go to the compiled folder, this is where you're going to actually turn in your assignments. So I'm only going to come to this compiled folder and I'm going to grab the playground folder to do, to look through and grade all the playground assignments. So this is where you're going to actually be submitting your work, but the working folder is important so you can submit your work to Perforce, make changes, get practice using this at an individual level, because moving forward you're going to be doing this as a team. So you want to make sure you get a good understanding of how it works before you start stepping on each other's toes and collaborating, right? Because the power of this is you guys are able to work on the same project, either if you're in the same room or across the country or across the world, and you're able to collaborate with this very powerful piece of software. So your working folder is where you're going to submit your actual Unity project, and then the compiled folder is where you actually submit your assignments. So that's just about the class itself. Let's get into a little bit about Perforce itself. So the depot versus the workspace. Does anybody have any guesses or know what the workspace is and what the depot is?
The workspace is where you actually complete your work, and the depot is where the information is shared with everyone collectively?
Yeah, that's really, really well said. So yeah, the workspace is just a copy of your computer. It's just a location on your computer. All it is a folder somewhere. So if I go over to my workspace, and I'm just going to go to 1603 working, and I can go right click show in Explorer. It just pulls up a window, and you'll notice that this path here, it's just a location on my computer, right? So it's just a copy of the depot that's on my own computer. I have these files, I can make changes to it. And like you said, that the depot is it's shared by everyone. This is where the information gets uploaded to, right? So this is the repository that it's not held here, it's not held at Full Sail, but it's a server somewhere that holds all this information. So Perforce has a really awesome manual, just about everything that the piece of software can do. And before Helix purchased this was atrocious. This was like not even close to how it is now. So let's just go through and read this whole thing, and then that way we'll get a good understanding. That sound good? Yeah, we're totally not going to do that. But this is a really good, like an introduction. If anything's not clear to you, you'll get a really good understanding. Here's a really good layout of what the workspace is and what the depot is. One thing I like to show you guys, and definitely want to take a look at this, is the icons. So about P4 icons, you guys see that good? So these, you'll see in Perforce that there's going to be icons next to the files themselves. And feel free to look through this when you get a chance to, because sometimes you may see something a little strange that you're not sure of. The key is don't panic, don't freak out, don't start to just delete files or change things. Just try and troubleshoot it yourself, and if you're having any issues, ask one of your peers or ask myself for any help. So you'll start to see some of these. So, and then as we go through, I'll point out, why that that is the way it is, and it'll start to make sense. So you'll see a lot of these come up throughout the month, and then it'll start to click as to what those actually mean. So this is just a really good resource to have. All right, so if you guys want to, if anyone has, does anyone have Perforce like up and running right now? You do? You guys have it open, and you're on this? Okay, you haven't. You don't see that up there, like the
What's the server
gdnperforce.fullsail.edu:1337.
We use the P4V, P4 merge, or the P4 admin.
P4V.
P4V.
Yeah. So if you'd like to, you can get the latest revision of the 1603 folder and go ahead and add your folder with the contact info inside of that. So that's the first thing you want to do if you'd like to now. But we'll have time to go over that later. No such. All right, so those of you that have gotten into the server, you can go ahead and add your, if you want to get the latest revision on your section folder and add just a folder with your contact info in the working folder, go ahead. But right now, we're going to just go over a few concepts and how to use the software and how it's just the basic, adding files, checking things in and out to get you set up and a little bit comfortable with navigating through Perforce. So you'll notice here on the left side that there's the depot and the workspace tab, right? So the depot, that's all the shared files. That's where the server is. The workspace is just a copy of your computer folder structure somewhere. So if your workspace isn't selected, you can use this little drop-down menu to select the workspace that you want to be on. So always make sure that you have the correct one selected. Over here in the right-hand corner, the right quadrant, I should say, you're going to see this pending tab. So these are where, when you are changing files, you're adding files to the server, Perforce calls it a change list, right? All your files are being added to a change list. So if you add something or you check something out and work on it, it's all added to this change list. And when there's files in here, you can actually go ahead and submit the change list. The history tab, if you don't have that open, you can go to, I think, view history, and that'll open up this up. This is also really, really helpful because then you can start to see who is working on what. Is more convenient in a team setting, but it's just a really good way to keep all of the history from your files, and that's what you get from Perforce that you don't necessarily get from, like, say, Dropbox. You don't have all the revisions of the file, you just have the most recent one. You got a question?
Is my username bound to any kind of a MAC address or an IP address, or can I access this from any computer?
You can access this through any single computer. Whether you're on campus or on campus or off campus, you're able to get onto the Perforce server. The one thing to note, though, is that every single computer you're on is going to have its own unique workspace, right? Because it's just a copy of your folder structure, so you're going to have one for each machine you're on. And I also recommend don't name them the same thing, because Perforce actually knows what workspace is associated with what user. So if it has two of the same, sometimes it can get a little confused. So if you have an at-home computer and your laptop that you're working on, just name them two different names for the workspace. All right, so you've heard me mention before about get latest revision. So when you go ahead and, on 1603, if I get latest revision, that's just going to copy. What that's doing, that's taking all the files on the depot and copying them onto my workspace. And I already had them, so it says no files updated. So let me see if I can grab something I don't have. All right, you guys have added some files, right? You notice that when you do get latest revision, it's added some files for you. So another really helpful trick, when you right-click on a folder and you go Show in Explorer, that's just going to pop it up and show you that same layout in your own computer file explorer. So now one thing I'm going to do just to showcase what get revision does and the difference between the two, I'm going to go into here and go into this Barack Obama example. I'm just going to delete this text document. So you notice I didn't delete it from the server. I didn't go into my workspace and right-click, mark it for delete, because that's going to actually delete it from the server. I went to the actual computer and deleted it. So now if I go to this Barack Obama folder on the depot, see the file's still there, and you see this 1 of 1. That means it's there's only been one revision there. So if I right-click on this and do Get Latest Revision, Perforce is telling me no files updated. Does anyone have a guess why that it's not updating?
Would you put it on the server? It's there. There's no previous thing to update.
No, it's close. I had the file before, but now I deleted it off my computer and I'm trying to get latest again, and nothing's changing. No, the reason is that Perforce thinks I still have the most recent version. So get latest revision is just copying what's on the server and adding it to the depot. If there was a change, you're right, then it would give me that update. But for the fact that it's the exact same file that I just deleted, it's not getting that revision. So you may run into instances where you're working on your project and something may break, and just something you don't know what went wrong. The best solution to troubleshoot is to just delete your local copy and get a fresh copy from the server, right? Because once you're submitting your things to the server, it's all safe and everything's up there. But this way, it's not gonna update because it still thinks you have all the files. So one way you can do to avoid that is you can do a get revision. So a get revision is a very, very powerful option, and you're going to notice this small little pop-up box that comes up here. So say, for example, you wanted to get a revision based on a date and time. You're like, okay, I know at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, my project was working and it was how I wanted it. So I'm going to get my revision based on that time and day. You could also do it by a revision or by the change list number. So a lot of different powerful options. But if you check this get latest revision and you do this force operation, so what force operation does is it's actually going to tell Perforce, even if you think I have all the files, get them for me anyways. So now I'm just going to check this box and do get revision. And you notice now down here in the log, it tells me one file has been updated. So that's one way to just make sure what you're doing on the server or what you're getting off the server is exactly what's on there. So what I like to recommend is, like, when you guys submit an EXE, delete yours off your own machine, do a get revision and force it. That's why when you do your play testing, that build, you know that's exactly what's on the server, not just what's on your own computer. So that's really the difference between get latest revision and get revision. They're doing the same thing, but that force operation is just telling Perforce, get every single file, even if you think I have the most recent. So the next concept I want to go over, and it's a pretty big one, so definitely make sure that you ask any questions about this if you have them. I really want to make sure everyone has a good understanding of this, especially by the end of the month, because this can be a very, very powerful workflow. So there's two different ways that you can work in version control. One of them I like to call the checkout workflow, and the other one I'm just going to call reconcile offline work. So does anybody have a guess to say if I wanted to edit one of these files on the server, what would the normal procedure, what would the process be to edit and make a change to one of these? Yep, so I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to right click on this, check it out. All right, and then I can just go ahead and open it up. I'm just going to make a change to it. Now, since it's checked out, I should be able to save it. All right, and now what would I do from here? Yep, so now you'll see in my pending tab, I have I have this file here. It looks like someone else also has been working on it. So let's see if I can now submit this. So now this window comes up here. So this is the change list. Submitting the change list and writing in the description. Always important that you put something in here. Obviously, Perforce needs something in here before you can actually hit the submit button. But you want to make sure that this is actually very clear and concise. You don't just want to write any nonsense in here because it's important that you can read other people's changes and know exactly like, okay, I changed this on this day. This is when I tried to submit this and it didn't work. Having very clear and descriptive notes here is going to make it very easy for other people to work on your project as well as yourself. If you have multiple change lists in one day and something goes wrong, you want to know exactly which one each one of those changes were. So I'm just going to write in a short description there and then go ahead and hit submit. All right, and now you'll notice this file has changed. So it now says 2 of 2, and I can also see in the history there's 2 different entries. So over here you're going to see this is version number 1, this is version number 2. So very clearly, and these are probably, it's probably difficult for you guys to see the icons on the screen, but this one is just a piece of paper with lines on it with a small little green dot next to it. That means that this version is the head version, the most recent that's on the depot. So that's the process of checking in and out with Perforce. So it can be a bit tedious at times, and especially when we're working with Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and open up. See if I've got a project here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the project template. This is what you guys are going to be grabbing to start out with. This is going to be the basis of what you're going to be working on going forward. So here we are in the project template. And so when we're working with Unity, that checking in and out workflow that I just demonstrated, it becomes a little bit more difficult because Unity has a lot of extra things going on in the background. So you may have noticed from working in Unity, there's some things called meta files. Anyone familiar with those? So every single file in Unity has a meta file attached to it, even folders. A folder has a meta file. So if I go into Perforce and I take a look at it, see there's the scene. Here's the exact same name of that scene, but .meta. Here's my terrain, and then terrain.meta. Even down here, so here's all the meta files for these folders. So here's the ASCOR folder, ASCOR So there's all these extra little files that are going on in the background that you have to be conscious of because sometimes they're changing, other times they're not. So it's important that you're aware that they're there because otherwise you may not submit everything to the server. So what I'm about to show you is a way to streamline your workflow, but you have to be conscious of what it's actually doing. So let's just go ahead and do an example. So I'm going to go into Perforce or go into Unity, and so say I'm just working on my project. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a script, and I'm just going to make a change to this. Nothing crazy. Once Visual Studios opens, there we go. So I'm just going to add a comment up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm just adding a comment, making a change to this. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, overwrite it. All right, so I made a change to that. So say I want to come into my scene and I want to add an object in here. Say I'm building something, I'm building a wall or some type of object here. Right? So I added something to my scene. Say I want to put a material on this. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. I'm just going to call this test. And let's go ahead and apply this material to my new object. All right, so that's pretty good. I've been working on stuff. I edited a script, right? Something that already existed. I edited the scene and I created a new material. So I'm going to go ahead and save my scene and save my project. Okay, so one thing to note there, when I did all of that, I didn't check anything out of Perforce, right? I was just working in my scene. So now if I come back to my project, I'm able to do what's called reconcile offline work. And now what this is actually doing is it's going to, wherever I do it from, so whether I do it from the scenes or from the assets or from anywhere in the project itself, what it's going to do is it's going to scan all of those files that's on the depot and compare it to everything that's on my workspace. Anything that's different, it's going to find those and add those to a change list for me, including the meta files, anything that's changed or new. So what I'm going to do, and this may take a second because the folder itself is really large because the project is large. So it's important that when you're doing this, you're conscious of like where you're adding your stuff to. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it from the assets folder. I'm going to go ahead and reconcile offline work. So right now this is going to go through Perforce and scan every single file in the assets folder, right? So in the ASCOR, in the editor, in the scenes, in the standard assets, it's going to go through every single one of those and look for anything that's different. And this ASCOR is pretty big, so it may take a second, but it's going to pop up another window that's going to tell me exactly what it found. And now the power of this, the reason why you want to do this is because of those meta files and because you're going to be doing a lot when you're in your Unity project, right? You may be working on your scene, maybe adding materials or adding new meshes, you may be editing a script or creating new scripts. You could even be changing the project settings, right? You could be doing a lot of things to your scene, and yes, you can go through and actually check out each one of those files and the meta file going along with it. That's totally normal. Yeah, I don't think it's crashing. It's just taking a second.
So, because it takes so long, through your wisdom, how often would you say we should do this?
Well, the reason it's taking long right now is because I made the choice of doing it from this assets folder.
And it's a very big project. But if we're doing a big project, how often would you suggest we do this?
I would say this can be your standard workflow, but the reason I'm doing it this way is to show you how long it's taking, and what you want to do is instead, you can go into, so say like this is just set up in a way where it's the structure of the project, right? So say you create a new folder that's like for your experiments, your wind turbine experiments. You create a new folder that's only stuff contained for those experiments or the things you're working on. You can reconcile offline work from that folder. So it's only going to check through that folder. But since I did it through the assets, it's looking through every single thing.
Okay. So instead of forcing it to search for everything, if you know what you've changed.
Exactly. And that's where organization becomes a huge benefit, because you know exactly where it is, and it looks like it did actually crash. So not a big deal, but it's important that that you understand what it is you're changing. So,
but can changing one file change a meta for a completely different file you did not even touch?
no, if usually everything is contained to itself. So nothing is really going to change largely like that unless a change has been made directly to it. So rather than doing from the whole assets, let me just try doing it from the ASCOR folder. Let's see if this gives me a better. Did you have a question?
Yeah, you wanted us to take some things from the depot and put them in our workspace, right?
Yeah.
What all did you want us to put there?
You're going to need to grab the whole month folder, just so you have the whole folder structure, so 1603. And you're also going to need to get the IND content folder. But
I've been doing it for like last 20 minutes. It sounded like 8%.
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful. This example gold project is really large. You may just want to start by just getting the project template. And it may also just be like a full sale network thing. It may just take a long time because usually the beginning of the month there's a lot of traffic going on Full Sales Network.
So get latest revision on the project input.
Yeah, that's a good start. You're going to eventually need all of it as well as the assets, but
15,833
yeah.
I have a question about the second method, the offline.
Yeah.
Because you're not checking it out, doesn't that pose a problem if two people were to do that to the server? Like if one person's job was to build a building and another was a wall, and I updated getting my wall on there, and then they updated with the building, they don't have my wall. So wouldn't they overwrite my offline update to the server?
Well, I mean, part of that's communication, right? Like you're going to tell each other, like, I'm working on this. And also you may want to get in the habit of actually locking files. But no, what's nice about Perforce is you can actually reconcile your offline work and submit your changes and then get the latest and everything will be back synced up how you're describing it. So you can be working on the same thing. It's in that scenario though, if you're both working on one scene, it's best to be in constant communication or just be in communication to each other, letting each other know like, hey, I'm working on this. Wait until this is up there before you submit your change, so you guys don't lose any work. But it's very powerful in the way that you can both be working on something and submit it and then get it to a point where everything's back where you want it to be. So that finished through, and now this window popped up. So everything I worked on, so that script and that material I added were both in that AskCore folder, right? So up in the top here, modified files. So this is files that are going to be checked out. It says right here in the parentheses. Files not in the depot. So this is that new material I made. This is going to be marked for add. If I deleted anything, it would show up in this little list. So by actually hitting reconcile, it's going to go ahead and add that to a change list for me. So now all those files are in a change list, right? So you're going to see there's a small little plus sign next to these, and if I hover over it, it should tell me it's here, there, marked for add. And now this one has a check mark next to it, and now that shows it's red check mark, so that means it's checked out by myself. If it's blue and it's on the right-hand side, it means it's checked out by somebody else. So those are those changes. Now I can actually go ahead and let me reconcile offline work from the scenes, because I also worked on the scene. And see how quick that was? That was immediate, right? Because there's a very small folder. So that's why it's important that you know exactly what it is you're working on. Totally true story. I was working in a lab and I was talking to a student about, all right, so let's go to your script and see where their mistake was. And he said, well, how do I know that I made that script? Like, true statement. He asked me, how do I know if I made that script? And I was like, well, did you make the script? Or so you just be conscious of what it is you're creating and where it's going. And if you guys want to reorganize your own project, feel free. This is just a structure that we have in place. And some of the stuff that, like the AskCore stuff, you may not need to actually touch. But if you want to add in a new folder, for your experiments, so maybe you have a visuals and setting folder or a rigid bodies or a wind turbine. So the different experiments we're going to be working on during the class, you can create a new folder for those and keep all the stuff that's important to that experiment or that assignment in a contained location. So you can very easily come to Perforce, reconcile your experiment, submit it real quick. But if you're putting things all over your project, you're going to have to make sure you submit all those pieces no matter where they are. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reconcile. And as long as I have this default change list down here, it's going to add all that stuff to the same change list. So now I've got everything in here. Now I can go ahead and submit this. All right. All right, so I made some changes, submitting those, and that's pretty much the same workflow, right? So as checking in and out, like it's accomplishing the same task. I've successfully made changes or added new files to the server. But in this case, it's a little bit easier for me and more convenient. So you're gonna have these meta files you're gonna have to be conscious of. So it's important that you're submitting those as well, and not just the assets or the scenes. Good question?
In a professional environment, are these sort of things that a team would create, or is this something designated by the company to teams? Like, do you create a new one every time you do a project, or is it sort of like a set for the rest of your career there?
You mean a new server, a new work?
Yeah, like a new depot with like you wouldn't like you wipe it, or would you just get a new one? As you go
Well,
with the company?
each company may have their own structure. Some companies may have multiple servers for different projects, or you can set it up to where, like, you guys may only see this IND folder, right? But if you look on my machine, I see IND, level design, peer evaluation. I see all these other folders. So there's permissions that get set up to only allow certain users access to certain areas. So that's also one way. Usually there's only one server or one or two, because usually, I think, depending which versioning software you go with, you pay for each server, and then you also pay for a number of users. So it's probably cheaper for most companies to just have one server with multiple projects on it, and this can hold up to 500 gigs or a terabyte of information. So it's really robust in the amount that it can hold, and this can 1,000 to 5,000 users can be active on this at once. So there's not much benefit for having multiple, but I'm sure there are companies that do so.
You wanted us to add something to the working right now?
Yeah, if you want to, you can go ahead and just create a folder. Just like this would just be last name, first name, and then just create a contact info. So you can just put in your email address or your Skype contact, just some type of contact info in that file. And then once that's there, let's go ahead and actually do that. I'll do another one with you guys. So let's go ahead and show in Explorer. All right, so I open that up, go to the working folder. I'm going to create a new folder, call this, let's go with Donald Trump. Don't want him, but
Donald
that's here
Trump.
now. Huh?
Drum. His
Drum?
name is actually Drum. He changed it to Trump.
Like this?
Yeah, there you go. This
All right.
one changed it.
Perfect. So I've created that folder, and here I'm just going to create a new text document. Open it up and just add something. All right, so then you're going to notice in the Depot tab here, once I created that folder, it's not showing up in the Depot tab. I hit this refresh up here, it's not showing up. If I go over to my workspace, here's this folder now. And if you can see, next to that, it's a small little white piece of paper. What that icon means is that it's not yet added to the Depot. It's on your workspace, but not on the Depot just yet. So a few different ways that we could add this to the server. And let's go ahead and just show the different ways we could do so. So one would be we could actually just reconcile offline work from this folder, right? Because all it's doing is scanning for anything that's changed, checking out things that are modified, marking things for add that are new, and marking things for delete that aren't there anymore. So it found that contact info. I can hit reconcile, and it's going to add it to that change list. Now, does anybody have an idea of...
That you just did, or that we were adding the text file is when I started adding it. I'm not sure if I missed something. I don't know what we're doing right now.
So if you created the text file in your folder, you'll probably see in your working in the Depot tab, you don't see that folder yet. But if you go to the workspace side, you can see that new folder and that new text document you just created. You see it?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I just went over. I just showed reconcile offline work again. I'm really going to hammer it home so you guys understand what reconcile offline work does.
I see the folder that I created, but do we need to create a new Word document and then save that into that file?
You can just do a text file. You can just right click in the folder and do Just right click,
Oh,
new,
in the thing.
yeah, new text document. So I went ahead and reconciled offline work. Does anybody know if I want to remove this file from this change list, what would I do? So say I accidentally added this, I don't want this on the server. What would I do? I'll give you a hint. Close.
Revert file.
Yep. So revert files. So what revert files is going to do is it's going to go through and just remove everything from that change list.
Sorry to do this again. I went to my workspace and then I got the updated version with my contact info text file. And then I went to the pending and then I did submit. And then it said that I clicked a check mark on something and then another one came up. And I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure if that was part of the process or.
So did you successfully add the first one?
The first one?
Did you add has it been added to the depot? It doesn't look like it has yet.
No. I don't know what I.
You may also notice in your pending change list tab here, this filter that's available. So at first it may look like this. If you go ahead and open this up, you may see something a little intense that looks like this, and you see all of the change lists. This may be difficult to read and obviously not very conducive and helpful. So what I definitely recommend you can do is filter user is, you go to the drop down, you can do current user, workspace, current workspace. So that's only going to show you the changes on your machine and on this user account.
By default, it already said current user,
Yeah.
current workspace. So
Okay.
when all that other stuff popped up, I was like, what?
Cool. I think that's actually a new thing. I don't think by default it used to be current like that, but that's definitely a good thing. So, one thing to remember is that this may happen. You may end up with multiple pending change lists at once, and Perforce isn't going to like that. You're going to need to clear those out before you're actually able to submit. So just always be careful of this and be conscious to make sure you don't have multiple change lists stacking up. And that's usually the first thing you want to do if you're running into an issue is just start to revert those files and clear out those changes, and then you can submit things how you'd like. All right, so just a few other things before we'll take a short little break. So with the Unity project, you guys may be familiar already that Unity has a library folder. You guys know about the library folder? I've at least seen it on your computer. So if I go to, when you go ahead and grab the project template, you're only going to have an assets and a project settings folder. But when you go ahead and actually open Unity, it's going to create all these other files, right? Here's this library folder and this temp folder. So what these are, kind of like the meta files, but these ones, the library folder is unique to your own machine. So it's going to require these assets to actually run the project. But if the library folder and the temp folder ever gets submitted to the server, the project just won't open. And the reason is because by default, Perforce marks these files as read-only, right? That's how when you check something out, it's not read-only anymore, and then you're able to submit, edit something and submit it back. So when these are marked for read-only, Unity doesn't have access to change them because they're constantly changing and being updated, and honestly, I don't even know what's going on. I just know that if you submit them, you're going to run into issues and that they're unique to every machine. So just be careful that you don't ever submit these. And when you look on the depot, you should only see assets and project settings. That's it. No other, you may even see like .sln files or other files for Visual Studios, but you only want your assets and your project settings. But it's totally normal to see it on the workspace tree, and you're going to see all these other files. As long as you don't ever submit them, you're going to be okay. So I talked about the filters, talked about history. So just really make sure that you're submitting your work often and as often as you can. So I like to go by the rule of how much work are you guys comfortable losing? Right? I'm comfortable losing about 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour worth of work because I know I can get back. But if you wait a whole day or even the entire week and then try and reconcile offline work, or you accidentally do something wrong, now you're just shit out of luck and you can't get back to where you were. And it happens. I deal with it all the time. People wait till Sunday night or Monday afternoon to try and submit a whole week's worth of work. Something goes wrong and now all their work is gone. So, and when I'm saying all their work is gone, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but what normally happens is, so with the reconciling offline work, that's really why I'm trying to harp on it and make you guys aware of what's actually going on, is because, say for example, I'm in Unity and I make some changes, I do some stuff. Say I just want to, let's just go ahead and like duplicate this guy 3 times. All right, I made a change to my scene. I'm gonna go ahead and save it. But then, one of my teammates is like, "Hey, I just made a change to the scene. Go ahead and get latest." I'm like, okay, let's do that. So I'm going to go over here, go to my scenes, and I'm going to get latest revision. And right, it's like, uh-oh, what did I just do? So now if I, actually, let me just close Unity before I do this. I don't know if it actually, well, it's still there.
Saying that you didn't change anything?
Well, it's saying that there's no, I think in my case, normally something would change. So say someone else was on the team. So, and this is usually what will happen is someone on the team will be like, hey, I made a change to the script or to my scene. So go ahead and get the latest. So by getting the latest, what is that doing?
Updating what they've submitted to be changed with.
Yeah, it's going to take everything on the depot, check for any changes, and copy it onto my workspace. So by doing reconciling offline work, you're not submitting anything, you're not like checking anything out until you submit. So it's going to overwrite all that stuff you just did. Does that make sense? You understand?
Yeah.
Right? So you're doing things while the files are read-only, you're making changes, but then when you get, so actually if I just do, here, I know a way to do this. So I do get revision and force. It's going to go ahead and copy these files. And now I go ahead and try and open this scene up. So by forcing, that would be just, grabbing those files anyways. And now you're going to see those blocks I made are gone. I never submitted it to the server, and I saved it to my own machine. But when I got latest, I just wiped out my work. And that can happen, especially when you're working in a team. You're like, hey, I just worked on this. Go ahead and grab the project. Like, okay. And you just forget to reconcile offline work first. Then you're going to walk yourself into a trap. So always make sure if you're going to go with the reconciling offline workflow, and just get comfortable with it this month, test it out, because this month you're in a very safe environment to where if something breaks, if something goes catastrophically wrong, you're going to be okay. You're not going to be losing months or weeks of work. But just be conscious of what it's actually doing, because you can very easily walk yourself into a trap. So always make sure you're submitting your work first and then get the latest from the team or any changes. Question?
Yeah, would you like us to get the latest revision or for the entire folder that you got, including the Unity stuff right now? Because I started doing that, then I realized it was taking forever.
Yeah, you guys may not have, just the bandwidth on campus to get the entire, because you're going to need, eventually you're going to need the whole IND content folder. And honestly, where'd it go? This example gold is like a gig or so, and this is just something we're going to play through together, but I wanted to have available in case you guys wanted to see where you're going to be at the end of this whole process. But you're going to at least need the project template. So if you want to just go ahead and get latest on the project template now, that's fine. And also this scraps assets. This has a bunch of assets there that's going to be available for you guys for building some of your assignments and your levels. So you may need to get that off campus or later on.
This is a copy of the entire final project folder to my workspace. So I only did the IND229 folder.
That's fine.
I don't know if I needed the peer evaluations of the scripts asset in my workspace.
No, that's, you actually shouldn't have permissions to that, but I can change it and it's not gonna affect, you only need everything in the IND folder.
All right.
All right, so let's see, I think that as far as Perforce goes, I know that's a lot of information to take in, but hopefully you guys got a good start. Any other questions at all before I'm gonna give you guys a short little break? What's that? Okay.
If you're still downloading all.
So whenever I try to